basically what I want to do is try to tie up some loose ends today. The first thing that I want to discuss with the committee is the letter that we received from Brookfield. Madam Clerk, when was that distributed? On Monday morning? Both official languages? Monday?
Friday.
Yeah, Friday, okay. So if you'll recall, when we had Mr. Bieber here, there was some discussion about sending about some information that had been requested. We got a letter back dated December 5th from Brookfield in relation to the composition of certain Brookfield funds, disclosure of limited partners and investment funds, Brookfield tax payments 2022-2024, exhaustive investment portfolio, and they concluded the letter with a statement. My purpose is to see whether the committee wants or needs any further action on this letter. Mr. Majumdar.
Appreciate the opportunity, Chair, and appreciate the chance that we've had a few days to review the letter from Brookfield. Look, I think if I could just offer a perspective here, the reason we have a cloud of corruption is because the Prime Minister has created the cloud. The issue that we can see is clear from the letter is the Prime Minister. If the Prime Minister wants full public confidence, he can waive confidentiality on anything related to his own holdings. Nothing in the letter prevents transparency if the Prime Minister chooses so. The only person who can clear this up is the PM. He can authorize the release of information relevant to his ethics screen. Now, Canadians deserve to know that the decisions made by the Prime Minister have no bearing on his personal financial interests. They need to know that parliamentary oversight depends on transparency from public office holders. The PM's ethics screen only works, Chair, if Canadians can see that he proactively removes doubt, not hides behind this confidentiality. So this is about protecting public trust in our institutions, something the Prime Minister has so far refused to do. He can direct that Brookfield waive confidentiality, and we can understand exactly how he is not incentivized to benefit from these things.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Majumdar. Mr. Cooper, I saw your hand. Mr. Saini, and then Mr. Hardy. Cooper, Saini, and Hardy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and let me say that it was with disappointment, but I have to say at the same time I'm not all that surprised with the response from Brookfield. But it is nonetheless an unacceptable response. We have seen a complete lack of transparency on the part of the Prime Minister when it comes to the extent of his vast conflicts of interest as it pertains to Brookfield. And I guess while I'm disappointed and while I say that the response from Brookfield is unacceptable, at the end of the day, this could all be cleared up by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister withheld from the Ethics Commissioner, and he's withheld from Canadians the 1,900 other Brookfield companies that we learned about when Mr. Bieber appeared before this committee. Now, Mr. Bieber at committee confirmed that when Brookfield does well, the Prime Minister does well, having regard for the fact that he has stock options. He stands to make tens of millions of dollars from those stock options, as well as, of course, future bonus pay from the Brookfield Global Transition Fund 1. Well, if it is the case, as it is, that when Brookfield does well, Mark Carney does well, then it is relevant to know what these other Brookfield companies are. The fact that the Prime Minister has not disclosed them raises questions about the robustness of the so-called ethics screen insofar as that many potential conflicts of interest may not be captured by the ethics screen. And for Brookfield to say, well, there's nothing to see here because these other companies are de minimis relative to the Prime Minister, I'm not prepared to just take Brookfield at their word. when I asked the ethics commissioner, it's clear he has not seen these other 1,900 companies, so I don't understand how he could look at this and take at face value Brookfield's assertion that it's nothing to see because it's de minimis. So we need to find out what these other 1,900 companies are, and I would call on the Prime Minister to help us clear the air by requesting that Brookfield provide them if he doesn't already have them. But of course, given the fact that he was chair of Brookfield up until a year ago, he would have most, if not all, of those companies. And at the very least, we need to know the companies that are in Canada, but there could very well be others. And, you know, what we have seen with respect to the total lack of transparency continues. It's just part of a pattern of not being forthcoming, because not only do we not know these companies, we now saw, based upon the testimony of the ethics commissioner, that the Prime Minister basically was hiding from the ethics commissioner all of the various times that he met with Brookfield. The Prime Minister was told by the ethics commissioner to stay away from Brookfield. And yet, 2 days after the federal election, a Brookfield-owned company on the screen was lobbying the Prime Minister. The ethics commissioner had no idea about that. Further to that, on May the 6th, the CEO of Brookfield Infrastructure met with the Prime Minister in Washington, D.C. The ethics commissioner had no idea about that. In October, Mr. Bieber, the chief operating officer of Brookfield, met with the Prime Minister alone in the Prime Minister's office. The only reason the ethics commissioner knew about that was because of testimony at this committee, and this from a Prime Minister who claims that he is in constant contact with the ethics commissioner. Well, it seems that when it comes to meeting with Brookfield, all of the times the Prime Minister's been caught meeting with Brookfield, the ethics commissioner has been left in the dark. And along the lines of a lack of transparency, hiding things, we then see what has been discovered buried in the Budget Implementation Act, Bill C-15. We see buried in the Budget Implementation Act a law, amendments, that would give any minister within the government the discretion to exempt any entity, so that could be a corporation, body, or person, from any law, any act of Parliament other than the Criminal Code. The minister would have the ability, with respect to the exemption, to effectively hide the nature of the exemption, because the minister could exclude information that the minister asserts concerns safety, security, or confidential or personal information. Those are very wide parameters for a minister to hide from Canadians the scope of an exemption to a corporation or an individual to be exempted from the law, exempted from following the law. And so what sorts of situations could that be? Well, I mean, it could mean that Brookfield could be exempted from complying with the Lobbying Act, from having to report all the times that they're lobbying this Prime Minister and those in this government. It could mean that a company could be exempted from procurement and contracting rules opening the door for sole source contracting. It could mean the gutting of environmental laws, access to information, every law other than the criminal code. And you know, we've seen this movie before. We saw this movie before back in 2018 when the Liberals snuck in to the Budget Implementation Act a deferred prosecution agreement regime. If they snuck it in for a very specific purpose, and that was to interfere in the prosecution of SNC-Lavalin for all of SNC-Lavalin's extensive corruption. And we saw Justin Trudeau then, within months of that being snuck in to the Budget Implementation Act, him interfering in the prosecution, interfering in the independence of his Attorney General, and then attempting to obstruct justice and cover it up, abusing his cabinet confidence powers. And so we've seen this movie before, and just like in 2018, this was snuck in to the Budget Implementation Act. No minister talked about it. It's very clear the Liberals were hoping that no one would read the full bill, a 700-page bill, and that it would be missed, and but it would be law. And so there are a lot of questions about how this got in here, what the Prime Minister's involvement was, because something simply doesn't add up. Something smells, quite frankly. And so with that, I would like to put on notice the following motion, that the committee, A, undertake a study of the subject matter of Bill C-15, an act to implement certain provisions of a budget tabled in Parliament on November 4th, 2025, and of the process by which this act and Budget 2025 were developed with a view toward assessing ethical concerns that arise from certain provisions of the act, certain measures in the budget, and the process by which the act and the budget were developed, and for the purpose of this study, invite witnesses as may be proposed by members of the committee to provide testimony, and at the conclusion of the study, create a list of recommendations to be reported to the House and deposited with the clerk of the Standing Committee on Finance for its consideration. B, order the production of all records in the possession of the Prime Minister's office and the Privy Council office related to any meeting in which the Prime Minister and or any staff from the Prime Minister's office were present that in any way relate to Budget 2025 and Bill C-15, an act to implement certain provisions of a budget tabled in Parliament on November 4th, 2025, including but not limited to stakeholder engagement in the development of Budget 2025 and Bill C-15 from the period beginning on March 14th, 2025 and ending on November 4th, 2025. These records should include but not be limited to calendar entries, briefing notes, memoranda, emails, and records of conversations, and these documents are to be provided with the clerk of the committee in both official languages and without redaction by no later than 3 weeks following the adoption of this motion. C, should the government fail to deliver the documents referenced in B, as ordered and by the deadline established by the committee, report the material facts to the House at the earliest opportunity. D, commence the study referenced in A immediately after the committee finishes hearing witness testimony for its study on challenges posed by artificial intelligence and its regulation, provided that no more than 3 additional meetings are scheduled for this witness testimony, and E, make use of the evidence received during the study referenced in A for the committee's review of the Conflict of Interest Act.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cooper. So that is a motion that is put on notice, and you'll distribute that with the clerk so that we can further distribute it to the members of the committee. Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Saini, I've got you next. We're on the Brookfield letter. Any comments on that? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, after sitting here for last 6 months, I have not heard one single word from my friends on the opposite side that deals with the actual issue of amending the ethic laws. All we hear is bogus theories based on, prime ministers. We have heard witnesses after witnesses telling us that the Canadian ethics law are the gold standard of the world. It is the best in the world. And we also been told by people who actually take care of them, clerk of the Privy Council, the chief of the staff of the Prime Minister, that absolutely there are no issues. But my friend continued to spread those theories so they can be seen good on the TV, or they can spread those messages on the public media to score cheap political point. This is not the place to play political games. This is a very serious committee. It deals with ethics of parliamentarian. We've been told by the ethics commissioner even last Monday. He sat here for 2 hours and answered every single question. Mr. Cooper, you raised the question with him last Monday, about 1,900 companies. We were told those 1,900 companies are limited partnership. They are all over the world. It has nothing to do with the Prime Minister or any of the companies. We still continue to spread these bogus theories on a public domain so you can score some cheap political point. Mr. Chair, this is a sad day to our democracy when people, all they have to do is pick. And the other thing I want Mr. Cooper to know, he is the same Prime Minister who ran for the public office. Canadian knew who he was. Canadian also knew who the leader of the opposition was. Canadian of the opposition couldn't even hold his own bloody seat, whereas public, Canadian elected this Prime Minister to be the Prime Minister of the country. And we still continue to keep playing these cheap political games. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Saini. Just going to remind the committee as well that we will be dealing with the report based on the evidence that we heard, and be able to provide some submissions in terms of recommendations once that draft report is done. I was going to go to drafting instructions today, but Mr. Theriault is not with us. I felt it fair to him to be able to provide the analysts with some direction. So what I'm going to suggest going forward, and I've talked to the analysts about this and the clerk, and we've done this in the past, maybe we, over the course of the next couple of weeks, we can provide by email drafting instructions to the clerk, which would then be passed on to the analysts, and that would provide Mr. Theriault with an opportunity. And no disrespect, Madame Goudreau, pas de respect de ça, mais Monsieur Theriault est entraîné sur cette étude.
Mr. Theriault knows this study, and he's been here for all of the meetings, and I want to give him the opportunity to do that work.
Conflict of Interest Act in the context of the study that we did and make those recommendations. So that's to come. So thank you. Next, prochaine, Monsieur Hardy, Monsieur Sarré, Madame Lapointe.
Mr. Hardy, Mr. Sarré, Ms. Lapointe, and Ms. Goudreau. Mr. Hardy. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back to what was said here recently. I believe that the role of the Ethics Committee is to ensure that ethics rules are always being respected. We talked about a person that was reasonably informed and could raise questions, especially regarding an appearance of a conflict of interest, and that's what we're trying to do here. Monday, when we talked about MPs asking too many questions, I think that that's playing politics. We are here to ask questions for the people that we represent. When people come to me and ask what's going on with the Prime Minister and how is it that there's an appearance of a conflict of interest, can you go dig and see whether or not we are dealing with a situation that we've never seen before, well, we should. In this case, we're dealing with the Prime Minister, but we still need to dig into this. When we talk about Brookfield and investors, well, performance depends on markets, and the Prime Minister is improving markets, and it could lead to benefits for him. And Canadians deserve to know what's going on. We're not attacking a single person. We're seeking to ensure that the system is not being misused by someone with ill intentions. It was also stated that Brookfield has billions of dollars, and Brookfield stated, don't worry about it. Don't focus on what we're doing. But it's not up to them to decide whether or not we should focus on something at committee. We need to ensure that there are no mistakes being made. When I read Brookfield's letter, I see two things. The first is that it's the Prime Minister putting Canadians in this situation. If Brookfield wants to decide what needs to be looked at or not, I think that that's a mistake. They say in their letter that for businesses that comply with similar businesses, well, unfortunately, in Canada, there are no companies of such a size with ties to the Prime Minister, so they can't be treated like similarly sized businesses. So I believe that the letter shows that they want to be at arm's length, say that we shouldn't be looking into them, that everything is well, but I think that that's a mistake, and we need to continue with our work. Thank you, Mr. Hardy. I am pleased that you spoke about the letter because that is what we are currently speaking about. I know that we're in committee business, but I did want us to talk about the letter. Mr. Sarry, followed by Ms. Lapointe, Ms. Goudreau, and Mr. Cooper raised his hand.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to come back to the letter. Whether we like it or not, we might have different opinions. When I read the letter, I saw that they were honest and they gave a complete response. They responded honestly to our questions. Whether we like the letter or not, well, that's a matter of perception. We can have different points of view. The matter of whether or not I like the question is not important. I'm not an expert in the field, but I will base myself on the testimony from experts that we have invited. And they helped us understand the ethical issue. And because these are experts, and a lot of them said that our system is strong. And for the questions that we sent to Brookfield, we received answers, and basing ourselves on advice that we've heard from experts, I think that the letter is a good one, and the response does help us close this study. What I don't appreciate is, and now I'm not speaking to the committee, but rather to those who are listening to us. Go back and look to the experts that we've heard from. The Liberals, the Bloc, the Conservatives, we invited experts, and you will be able to see exactly what they said regarding this situation. They have said that we have one of the most solid systems. Other countries believe that we have a strong system, and the Prime Minister's situation, Mark Carney's situation, is not one that leads to a conflict of interest. And following the meetings that we've had, we need to focus on what needs to be changed without personifying this debate because we are undermining the trust of Canadians, because we are politicizing ethics, and we have to be very careful. And I'll stop there. Thank you, Mr. Sarry. Ms. Lapointe. Thank you, Chair. You suggested that I should present my team. I have Rachel Ben Larbi and Alexia Anderson. These are their first time here on the Hill. They usually work in my riding. Now, I would like to come back to what Mr. Sarry was saying. We are doing a study on the Conflict of Interest Act. This is what we've been doing since September. The Conflict of Interest Commissioner came twice, at the beginning of the study and last Monday. And I'm going to get back to the letter as well. We heard from Michael Sabia, who has an extensive background. He worked at Hydro-Québec and the Caisse de dépôt de placement of Québec. Marc-André Blanchard was also one of our witnesses here. They explained how a blind trust works in tandem with the ethics screen. They explained how everything worked, given the questions that were asked by committee members. And when the commissioner came back on Monday, we were able to discuss things with him, and he had paid attention to the testimonies from Mr. Blanchard and Mr. Sabia. The ethics commissioner was satisfied with their answers. Furthermore, regarding blind trusts and the screen, the ethics screen, the ethics commissioner was very satisfied. He, as my colleague mentioned, stated that we have one of the best systems for conflict of interest globally. The commissioner stated that we could look to BC to add a small element, and we can include it in the report when it comes to that. And so I find it hard to hear certain comments taking time to focus on something that doesn't exist. He does not have access to decisions that have an impact on Brookfield. It's all in the screen. Everyone seemed very satisfied, except a select few. But knowing that the ethics commissioner is very comfortable and is very confident with what happened, well, when we look at Brookfield's letter, I understand it. But I would focus on what the ethics commissioner had to say and other testimonies that we've heard. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lapointe. Ms. Goudreau. Thank you, Chair. And thank you also for flagging that it is important for Mr. Thériault to be here, because it's hard to make recommendations when you weren't a part of the study. We're here today because the Ethics Committee does need to review legislation and ensure that there are no appearance of conflict of interest. And as you know, I started out at the Ethics Commissioner 6 years ago. And every time we needed to take the bull by the horns and focus on cybersecurity and protecting personal information, every time we ended up at the Ethics Committee, things became unclear, and my colleague mentioned it. There were some nightmares. There were 40 hours of filibustering around the We Charity, but we wouldn't have been here today, Chair, if the Prime Minister hadn't put all his cards on the or if he had put all his cards on the table. We wouldn't be here if there was no reason for us to look into it. And I read the letter, and I don't think that the ethics committee would be looking into this if we had set aside all of the information regarding an appearance of a conflict of interest. I don't understand how we don't have all of the information. I'm saddened to see that we're here in 2025 and the ethics committee needs to manage a situation that might be fine, but as soon as there's doubt, that's what leads the ethics committee to looking into any issues. So hopefully the Prime Minister will stop hiding, because currently it's like he's looking for trouble, but there are other issues that we could be focusing on. There are international issues, especially what's going on in cyberspace, on the web. Chair, I believe that if the letter had been more specific and shared more information, well, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I think we should focus on what should have been done from the start. Thank you, Ms. Goudreau. And thinking back on the discussions that we're having, perhaps we can do this after finishing a study, because it is good for us, the soul, to talk about all of it.
You ceded to Ms. Church. Go ahead, Ms. Church.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, look, I want to thank my colleagues' comments about the opportunity that we have as a committee to explore issues of importance that extend to some of the issues that I think we've explored over the past number of meetings, particularly as they pertain to artificial intelligence and where that intersects with the privacy and information rights of individuals. I think there's many interesting things that this committee could be examining. We've spent the better portion of this fall considering aspects of the Conflict of Interest Act. I think that it's incumbent on us to look at the mandate of this committee, to look at the purpose behind the Conflict of Interest Act itself. I think that there's opportunities for us to reflect carefully as parliamentarians on how we make the conflict of interest regime better. That's always, I think, the purpose of being a parliamentarian on a committee like this. I do think that it is also incumbent on us to call out when this committee wanders into areas of jurisdiction that I think aren't best placed with the committee. I think, as my colleague mentioned, over the course of the fall, we've not only heard on multiple occasions from the Ethics Commissioner himself, but we've had full disclosures, we've had witnesses appear, we've had the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister, we've had the Clerk of the Privy Council, and yet I think I have to agree with my colleague on this side of the table that I think we risk wandering into an area where we are too focused as a committee on trying to prosecute what is better left within the responsibilities that Parliament has entrusted to the Ethics Commissioner than this committee in terms of individual dealings. I think that the Ethics Commissioner has, on more than one occasion now, told this committee that he is satisfied by the conflict of interest regime that is in place concerning the Prime Minister, that the Prime Minister is considered by the Ethics Commissioner to have properly divested his assets. I think that we have heard from senior figures working alongside the Prime Minister about the seriousness and the depth of the procedures and policies that are in place to govern conflicts of interest. And I think that we've heard as well from Brookfield about the nature of their business and the work that they continue to do and the cautions that they raise or the limitations that they have in terms of their own privacy and other responsibilities as well that I think we need to take under careful advisement as a committee. But I think I am really most concerned about the slide by this committee into areas of trying to create linkages, trying to brew conspiracies where conspiracies don't exist. I think we owe something better to Canadians than that. And it's why we should be focused on, first and foremost, getting to the end of this study with serious recommendations on how to improve the Conflict of Interest Act with a clear understanding of all of its purposes, as well as to consider other issues that this committee could properly work on. And to that end, Mr. Chair, I would like to move a motion that pursuant to Standing Order 108-3H, the committee undertake a study of the use of AI in algorithmic pricing in Canada, that the committee hold a minimum of 6 meetings for this study, that the study explore the cost to Canadian consumers from these practices, that the committee hear from representatives of major digital retailers in Canada, including Ticketmaster, Air Canada, and Amazon, as well as from experts on algorithmic discrimination and any other witnesses the committee deems necessary, that the committee report its findings and recommendations to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the committee requests that the government table a comprehensive response to the report. I think pursuing this type of study is in the interest of Canadian consumers. We've heard this from some of our witnesses that we've had as part of our study into artificial intelligence, and would have a meaningful impact in terms of the work that this committee could do in improving and potentially creating novel approaches, novel frameworks to govern what is an emerging area of concern that would be a very good area for Parliament to consider, and certainly for this, where the Standing Committee can make a contribution to the understanding of Parliament in this area that I think increasingly concerns Canadians and their pocketbooks and the way that consumers are treated in the marketplace today.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Church. We are in committee business. The motion is in order. Are you able to share that? Have you got it in both official languages?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair.
Are you able to share that with the clerk?
Yes.
Okay. If you can do that now, what I'd like to do is distribute it to the members of the committee so that they have it on hand, so that they can have a look at it. It is in relation to artificial intelligence. We are undergoing an AI study right now, which is Mr. Theriault's study, and I will note in that that study, Mr. Theriault proposed that we have a minimum of 4 meetings on that. So I'd like to see some consistency in that with respect to the number of meetings that we can have instead of 6. Maybe we can have a minimum of 4 and then leave it up to us. But I'm not going to entertain, that's not going to come from the chair. That will be something that somebody will have to amend. But I am going to suspend for a couple of minutes so that it can be distributed to members of the committee so that they can have a look at it, and perhaps we can deal with it fairly quickly. Okay, we're suspended. The motion in both official languages has been distributed, Ms. Church's motion. The motion is in order. There were some discussions among the parties here. Ms. Church, would you entertain, similar to what we did with Mr. Theriault's motion, a minimum of 4 meetings rather than the 6 that you prescribed in the motion, or?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
definitely.
so we'll change that to reflect that. So the motion is on the floor. Monsieur Sarré, des commentaires sur la motion?
Oui. Oui, c'est un commentaire sur la motion.
It is a comment on the motion, but when we're talking about 4 meetings, it is because sometimes we have meetings that last only an hour. Yes, every meeting would be 2 hours each. When we organize a meeting, we'll try to have witnesses for 2 hours, even if we only have 2 witnesses. I agree for the motion. You may remember what I had to say on the first study that was proposed by Mr. Theriault. There are two ways to react to AI. We could focus on developing solutions and systems, or focus on the use of the tool. Where I agree is the abusive use of consumers, which could lead to issues in pricing for consumers, especially if we look at most studies that state that consumers are mostly online now. And we saw Black Friday that became an entire month of Black Friday deals. And that's a pricing game played by Amazon and other platforms. I think that this is interesting because we want to focus on standardizing and protecting consumers. I see Ticketmaster on the list, but I could give another example. Uber, for example. We found that the algorithm even focused on your battery life, that prices change depending on the battery life that you have left, and changed prices depending on the temperature outside as well. And consumers are vulnerable, and it's up to us as legislators to protect them. Uber was put back in its place regarding that algorithm because two people trying to request the same ride, and one who had a low battery life and one had a higher battery life, and the price was lower for one of them. I think that this study could be beneficial, and that's all for me. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Sari. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Do we all agree with the motion?
No. Bon,
Nope, not at all, Chair. I'm understanding, Chair, that the motion adopted by my colleague Luc Thériault is not finished, but it was adopted in September. We will be coming back to this study after the Christmas break, but for this study, this is different from Mr. Thériault's study. Once we're done with Mr. Thériault's study, that's when we would move on to this study. We would potentially have 2 more meetings. We've had some testimonies so far, but for the witnesses that had accepted the invitation for today, they were proposed by Mr. Thériault, and they can come back in January when he will be back. Same for the minister. We believe that the minister will be testifying at committee early in the new year. So we will be finishing Mr. Thériault's study before moving on to this study. There's also a motion regarding the Lobbying Act that we need to look at. So we will be doing some planning, some schedule planning during the break. I had a question because I haven't been at the Ethics Committee in a while, and I was looking at the level of detail. I'm not against the goal of this motion, but with all of the work that the Ethics Committee has to do, or rather, is it the right committee to look into such an issue? I'm wondering if Luc would want to look into this and frame it within his study. Perhaps we could find a constructive way to do this because there won't be a lot of meetings left at the end of January. I read the motion. there are a lot of things in this motion, and we can look at personal information, and I discussed this with Ms. Church. We could invite the Competition Bureau. I think that for privacy, the costs that companies are charging, and there's personal information that they are taking in order to increase costs or pricing, I think that that does frame well with the work of our committee, and that's why I made a decision that the motion is in order. All right, so the motion is in order. So today would be voting in favor or against the motion in order to plan for meetings sometime early in 2026. Not early 2026 when we come back, because we do have other studies. The Lobbying Act is something that we need to focus on. It's a motion that was adopted here, and we will invite the commissioner and other witnesses. So we might not be looking at this motion before March or April. Thank you.
No, nobody else? Okay. Are we all in agreement with this motion passing? Okay. Yeah, we have consensus. Perfect.
Four meetings?
Minimum 4. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Wait. Merci. Okay. Mr. Cooper.
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
I, just in light of the failure of the Minister for AI to appear as part of the AI study, despite, I think, 11 requests. This from a minister who says he's always happy to talk about AI, but for whatever reason doesn't seem to want to come to this committee as we study AI. And therefore, in light of the minister's continued stonewalling of this committee's request that he appear, I would move the following: that further to its study on challenges posed by artificial intelligence and its regulation, the committee A take note of the fact that despite the testimony of the Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation at the Standing Committee on Science and Research, where he said that he is always happy to talk about AI, and that, quote, the government is crafting its AI strategy very transparently, close quote, the minister was invited to appear before the committee on this study, but has thus far failed to make himself available to appear, despite the clerk of the committee reaching out to his office 11 times in an effort to schedule his appearance since the motion to invite the minister was passed by the committee on September 17, 2025. B, instruct the chair to write to the minister to request his appearance before the committee on the study by no later than February 6, 2026. C, schedule the minister to appear for 2 hours by no later than February 6, 2026. And D, should the minister fail to make himself available to appear before February 6, 2026, report to the House the material facts.
Okay. Mr. Cooper, I'm going to accept the motion. You brought it up. I just think it's worth repeating as well. We did reach out to the minister in the context of Mr. Theriault's study, a motion that the committee passed. We did get a letter indication from the minister that he would make himself available early in 2026. I take him on his word on that, and so if this motion does pass, it instructs me as the chair to write a letter to the minister, which we will do this week, encouraging him to come before the committee before February 6th, you said? In advance of February 6th. Okay, right. And the only other thing that I would say to that is that we don't know what our new schedule is going to be. Right now we're Monday, Wednesday. It could be Tuesday, Thursday. So we're going to keep that in mind. I think, in order to make sure that we tighten down the timelines. Okay, so the motion is on the floor. Any discussion on the motion? Monsieur Sarré? Oh, no? Quelqu'un?
Oui, moi je pense que le ministre sera parmi nous.
I think that the minister will be with us before February, so I wonder why we would include D in that motion as a hypothetical, because we've already received the information that he will be here. I've never seen a conditional in a motion. Chair, you already said that he will be with us before February, so perhaps D doesn't need to be there.
More formalizing, as you know, we can't compel the minister to come. I see this more as formalizing the request of the committee to come. As I said, he's already indicated he will come, so let's formalize this in a letter. Madame Goudreau, est-ce que tu lèves ta...
Simplement pour dire que c'est
I just wanted to say that this motion and as soon as a motion is tabled, usually we ask a minister to appear, and point D there, the conditional. Well, we need to understand that ministers are often very busy, but we need to include it anyway. And this is the same thing that we have at Government Operations, Veterans Affairs, and Brock. Ministers often testify. So I think that timeline, in some committees we say 2 weeks, but here we're giving them a date. Thank you. Mr. Saini.
The issue was raised, I think, a couple of weeks ago. I did speak to the minister. I think he was holding a G7 meetings in Montreal. And we have to understand, as a minister of the Crown, they, besides sitting in the parliament, they do a lot of other work. And he has indicated that he plans to be here, so we have to accept that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Saini. I don't see anything controversial with Mr. Cooper's motion request. It just formalizes on my part a letter to the minister saying, you know, we want you here before the 6th. So motion, I don't see any further discussion. Are we in agreement with the motion? Do we have consensus? I'm not seeing any. Okay, so we have consensus, right? Okay, so we'll take it as that. Thank you, committee members. I don't have any business. I just want to comment on a few things before we break here. Just on the state of the committee and how we've been working. I can tell you as chair, I've been the chair of this committee for almost 3 years now, and I'm very, very pleased with the way the committee is functioning. I think you know, for the most part, we've had very respectful dialogue among each other. You know, some of the issues that we deal with are uncomfortable issues. They are. And this is an oversight committee. And there are 4 oversight committees in this parliament: government operations, public accounts, and the status of women. And the purpose of an oversight committee, and it's majority led by the opposition, including the opposition chairs, is to provide oversight on the function of government. And as uncomfortable as sometimes that may seem, and some of the questions and some of the direction that we end up going, you know, its purpose is to provide that oversight. And so I think we've been doing that very, very effectively as a committee. And it's important work, because without oversight committees, and I'll use this committee as an example, there would not have been, for example, the SDTC situation exposed. There would not have been the We Charity scandal. And je pense que Madame Goudreau,
I think Ms. Goudreau probably remembers that. This work is very important. Yes, it does. Everything is going well at ethics. This work is good for the country, but also for democracy.
Of the work that we have been doing this fall session, and I hope that it continues. As uncomfortable as sometimes it may seem on all sides. And I try to be as fair as I can, understanding that we all have a role to play. And so I want to wish you all, in the backdrop of that, we're getting a list here? Des commentaires? Okay, so I was just about to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. But if...
Même chose.
Okay, so as we reflected earlier about this year, and as all of you had that opportunity, I thought I'd take that opportunity. But Madame Lapointe, si tu veux.
Oui, ben, j'irai dans le même sens que vous disiez.
Yes, I agree with you. Things are not always comfortable, but we have a job to do, and I would like to wish you happy holidays, and I hope that you will be able to rest. And I would like to share this to all of the staff. Thank you so much for supporting us and helping us with our work. To our analysts, our clerk, thank you so much. Happy holidays. Please don't miss us too much. Thank you. Mr. Sarri, I also wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year 2026, filled with joy and prosperity, health, of course. And what I say to the people in my riding, don't forget to tell your loved ones that you love them. It's very important. Thank you for your work, Chair, and thank you to all the support teams. Technicians, our interpreters, thank you so much.
One of the nice things in a democracy is that we can debate and we come up with the best solution. So I have absolutely no issue how we debate and how we, as long as there are things that are purposeful. And at the end of the day, all the staff, all my colleagues on the other end, and Madam Clerk, analyst, and everybody else, happy birthday, and thank you very much.
Happy birthday to you, Mr. Sanders.
Happy holidays.
He meant happy birthday, baby Jesus. That's what he meant. C'est la fête de... Look, on that note, I do want to thank. I do want to thank all my colleagues around this table. I also want to thank our staff as well. Welcome to the staff who are here for their first time on Parliament Hill witnessing our committee work. And I want to thank in particular our clerk for the many hours that we spend working together. The analysts as well, Maxime and Alexandra, for all of the work that you do. Our translators, merci beaucoup pour tout ce que tu fais. Our technicians as well for making us live every day. And I am going to conclude by wishing you all a very Merry Christmas, a happy holidays, and a healthy and happy and prosperous New Year. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.